fan of welfareism, right? But you say the conventional, policies are not.
大家好啊，今天是2024年的12月13号。今天给大家分享洪浩的英文采访。很多人都说洪浩的可信度是英文采访大于粤语采访大于这个普通话。那在英文采访中呢，洪浩对政策的分析说的可能更加的直白啊。好，我们废话也不多说啊，一起来看一下他的分享。
Let's bring in from Hong Kong, Hao Hong, who's a partner and chief economist at Grow Investment Group. Always really great to have you, particularly at a time like this. I'm just sort of still thinking about the quote that Steve just mentioned, right? May we all eventually be vibrant old people. But, it really does speak to the demographic challenges for policymakers in China.
That's right. But, remember that some of the spending by the older generation is on behalf of the younger ones, because the younger ones is experiencing this saving. And the jobless rate amongst the young people is very, very high in China right now. So I think some of the youngsters have been spending the pocket money from the older generation who are enjoying retirement benefits. And right now because the Social Security is still properly funded, so the pension payment to the older generation is actually can ensure a rather comfortable life. And I think that's the reason why Professor Gao is making such an observation, a very interesting observation as well. I think just now Steve mentioned about the consumption coupon, and many of the tier 1 cities, especially in Shanghai and Beijing, handed out probably hundreds of billions of worth of consumption coupons. But these are the coupons that you have to spend to get the discount, right? So the coupon usage rate is about 50 to 60%. It's not very high, and it's very different from handing out cash to the population. So as the rest of the market, we're still waiting for more specific details from the government.
Yeah, as Steve also points out, fan of welfareism, right? But you say the conventional, policies are not working. Should they be looking at things like just direct payments?
I think at this stage, most of us recognize that, the conventional policy doesn't work because the housing bubble bursting is still ongoing, right? So even though we have a reasonably a rebound in October, but we've seen similar rebound after the reopening in early 2023, right? So back then, we actually had 4 months of consecutively increase of housing transaction volume and price increase. And then it's all the way down from there. So I think, right now, no one can conclude that the property market is coming back to life. I think right now, if the property market is not recovering, then the credit growth through the property sector as it used to be cannot be regenerated either. Right? So even if you cut triple R, probably before the year end, we will see another 50 bips triple R cut, and probably next year we're probably going to see 100 basis point interest rate cut. But I think this policy has proven to be sort of futile to lift the Chinese economy, and therefore more unconventional policies needs to be done.
Is that still potentially just a short-term fix, right? Because perhaps longer-term reflation measures might just be difficult if this is a longer-term structural slowdown with a new normal of slower growth in China. To that end, do you still invest around that? Is that still a compelling investment thesis?
I think this year, if you look at the asset price performance, right? So the best performing asset class is actually Chinese bonds, right? So it's actually one of the best performing asset class in the world, right? So it's showing you that the disinflation or deflationary pressure is on, right? So the GDP deflator has been in negative territory for more than a year, and I think PPI upstream deflation has been around for more than 2 years, right? So it's showing you the scale, the magnitude of the deflationary pressure on the Chinese economy, right? So at this juncture, because if you want to stimulate Chinese consumption, this year Chinese consumption is probably about 50% of GDP. It's actually less than the historical average. So if you want to stimulate consumption to reach 5% growth target, it's going to be particularly hard unless you come up with something very creative. And on the external environment, you have the trade war ongoing, right? So that is going to exert pressure on Chinese exports growth, which has been a major contributor to Chinese growth in the past couple of years during the housing downturn. So now if the foreign demand for Chinese goods is slowing down as well, then it's going to hurt your export growth and as such GDP growth as well. So I think right now, even though we're seeing some promising signs from the conference, and consumption is indeed, the one of the first priority that the government is trying to address, but more creative policies needs to be seen for the market to have the confidence back.
Sector-wise, what do you like? I know that small cap tech is one element. Why?
I think those are the guys who is more likely than not going to get the government subsidy. And also those are the guys that is less affected by the trade war and also by a weakening Chinese currency. I think the market is looking at a substantially weaker Chinese currency going into the next couple of months. And I think, for the smaller tech firms, for example, the A500 index actually has been performing quite well and has been rather resilient in the recent market volatility. So I think, these are the firms that is, holding promise for the future. Some of them have rather promising technology patents. They're going to get, subsidies from and policy support from the government, and also, the valuation on these smaller cap names is not too excessive, and it's justified by the growth prospects, and it's attracting a lot of funds going into these sectors. So I would say that if the economy is performing 4%-ish growth, then these sectors are probably one of the better exposure that investors could have in the Chinese market.
When it comes to the degree of skepticism in this rally, and in fact since October, right, do you expect that to continue until we get perhaps more details in March?
I think in March we're bound to get more specific details. For example, one shouldn't be surprised to see fiscal deficit level raised to 4% and above. Between 4 to 5%. I think there will be specific guidance on a special purpose treasury bonds issuance and also ultra long dated treasury bonds issuance as well. So all in all, the budget deficit on a broadened sense would be about 10% plus, right? So it's not a small scale stimulus by any measure. But then having said that, this year we did slightly less than 10% budget deficit, right? So one shouldn't be too surprised to see that going into next year we should increase the budget deficit level, given what has been said in the Economic Work Conference. So I think come March, normally the Chinese market would be waiting for more details from the twin sessions.
The thing with Chinese equity markets is you never know quite how the retail component is going to react, right? If you had to make a bet, do you think the next 20% for Chinese stocks will be up or down?
Next 20%. That would be like a bear market or bull market. I think I think the Chinese market has been locked in a trading range for decades now, right? So for more than a decade, it's around 3,000, right? So it's just appalling, the performance. And I think reason being the economic growth model is running into obstacles, in a sense that the growth efficiency, the capital usage efficiency is declining, and also the labor productivity growth has been slowing down as well. So I think as a result, the market indices has been stuck in the range for more than a decade. But having said that, though, just now we discussed some of the opportunities within the Chinese market that could give reasonable performance for investors in the Chinese market. I think if I have to say whether it's a bull or bear market, and I think it's going to be still range bound until we find a solution towards future growth.
I had to ask you that question, of course, being the one who has in the past called the rise and the fall of the China equity story before. Hao Hong, always great to chat with you, partner and chief economist at Grow Investment Group.
看完他的视频啊，他表达的观点就是：第一呢，现在年轻人的失业率很严重，政府目前的政策呢不足以打破通缩。二，发消费券呢不如直接发钱有用，但是在不养懒汉的思维定式中呢，不大可能直接给老百姓发钱。三，房地产还没有见底，在房地产没有止稳之前呢，内需不大可能有大的回升。从我个人的理解啊，就是之前的房地产它撬动了整个，就通过房地产这个链条吧，撬动了整个内需。比如你买房，它这个你建设这个房子需要用到一些渣土啊、建材啊等等，对不对？装修呢可能需要用到这些木材、地砖啊、家具啊、空调啊、床啊、沙发啊等等等等啊。之前居民加杠杆，撬动了内需，养活了整条产业链的人啊，盘活了经济。现在没有房地产这个债务扩张期啊，内需很难有大的起色。四，居民现在杠杆过高，即使你降息降准，也很难让用户扩张债务。现在唯一能扩张债务的就是中央啊，其他的什么企业啊、地方政府啊、居民啊都没有能力去扩张债务。五，债券受到追捧，因为我们现在处于通缩嘛，没有好的投资机会，当然债券受到追捧了。六，如果想达到5%的 GDP 增长率啊，现有的政策是远远不够的，因为不仅内需不振，对外呢还有一些贸易战，别人增加的这种贸易壁垒，所以呢需要中央政府扩大财政赤字，拿出一些有创意的政策出来啊。七，在股票表现上呢，一些规模较小的科技公司可能会有机会，尤其是获得政府补贴的公司啊，我个人可能觉得是类似于半导体这种啊。至于财政赤字率啊，他认为如果说财政赤字率超过4%，也不必惊讶。那根据大摩的观点啊，他觉得如果说政府的财政赤字率能超过4%，达到4%，代表了政府某种思维定势上的一种转变啊。因为之前政府一直觉得，财政赤字率不能超过3%。第九啊，关于 A 股，他觉得在打破通缩之前变得开始通胀之前呢，股市都会是震荡的行情啊。这就是洪浩想表达的这样的一些观点啊。好，这次的分享呢就到这里，谢谢大家。